Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something, well, kind of sticky. It's that tangled mess of emotions that can spring up when you're leaning on someone else, like really depending on them. Whether it's needing help with where you live or just some other really essential support.
Yeah, exactly. It's that feeling of being dependent, something that I think a lot of people experience at some point, but it's not something we talk about much.
Right, it's like this secret internal tug of war that's happening. On one side, you've got this huge sense of gratitude for the help you're getting, but then on the flip side,
You can feel this frustration bubbling up.
absolutely. It's like you appreciate the support so much, but you start to feel like, well, maybe your choices aren't totally your own anymore.
Yeah, and that lack of control can spread, Like it's not just the big decisions, but even your everyday life.
Even your own personal space.
Exactly. It can feel like you're living in someone else's world, playing by their rules.
And when that feeling sticks around, it can really start to impact your mental health.
Yeah, we're talking about anxiety, maybe even depression.
Resentment can build up, and it can even mess with your sense of who you are.
Like you're always performing a certain role just to keep things going.
It's exhausting, honestly. Constantly adjusting, always second-guessing yourself.
Right, because you're so worried about upsetting the balance, jeopardizing the support you need. So for this deep dive, we're going to really explore this emotional territory. We've got some fascinating insights to pull from discussions around life in their hands, mental health, and lost autonomy.
And also from a podcast episode that really resonated with me called Under Their Roof, Under My Skin, Reclaiming Mental Well-Being, Independent Living.
Both of these really dig deep into what it feels like to be in this position. So our mission today is to help you make sense of these feelings and hopefully find some ways to start feeling more like yourself again.
And to improve your overall well-being in the process.
Okay, so I want to kick things off with something that really struck me from Life in Their Hands. It's this idea that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's basically that feeling when you sense someone else has control over your life in a way that you just don't want. It's like they're holding the reins and you're just along for the ride.
Yeah, that really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's about that fundamental feeling of being controlled, which is the opposite of feeling free.
And speaking of feeling free, it reminds me of this concept of autonomy that we've talked about before, in relation to mind matters and all that.
Oh yeah, autonomy is huge. It's that basic human need to feel like you have choices, that you're in charge of your own life.
Right, like you're writing your own story.
Exactly. And when you're dependent on someone else, even in small ways, it can chip away at that sense of autonomy.
And it's not just about the big life choices, is it?
No, not at all. It can be things like having to mold your schedule around theirs.
Or even feeling like you have to ask permission for basic things.
Absolutely. Little things, but
Yeah.
they add up. And then you start feeling like you're walking on eggshells all the time.
Like you're constantly trying to keep the peace, not rock the boat.
Right. And that takes energy.
Yeah.
All that mental effort just to navigate those power dynamics, it can really wear you down.
And that's where those feelings of helplessness, frustration, and resentment come in.
Exactly. Life in Their Hands puts it pretty bluntly, actually. There's this line that says, mentally ruins you because that person is in control of your life and you don't want that,
Wow, yeah, that's strong, but it kind of hits the nail on the head.
doesn't it? And it brings us to this really crucial point. How does all this impact your mental health? I mean, when you're in that constant state of not having control, it can really mess with your sense of self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy, that's like believing in yourself.
Yeah, it's that belief that you can handle things, you can make things happen.
And when you're always relying on someone else, it's like that belief starts to fade.
Exactly. Because you're constantly getting the message, even if it's unspoken, that you can't do it on your own.
And all that uncertainty, not knowing what's going to happen next because it's not really up to you, that must breed a lot of anxiety.
Oh, tons of anxiety. And stress, too. It's like, you know how frustrating it is when your internet goes out and you can't fix it?
Ugh, yeah, the worst.
Imagine that feeling, but amplified and applied to your entire life. That's what it can feel like when you're dependent on someone else. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, never really feeling secure.
And feeling like that day after day, it must really start to affect your self-esteem.
Oh, absolutely. If your life doesn't feel like it truly belongs to you, it's really hard to feel good about yourself.
Like your needs and wants are always taking a back seat.
Exactly. And that can lead to feelings of inadequacy, like you're not good enough, which can spiral into depression.
And Mind Matters talks about how this feeling of being trapped, of not having a voice, that's a particularly heavy burden.
Yeah, it's different from facing a challenge head on.
Yeah.
In those situations, you at least have some agency, some control over how you respond. But this kind of dependence can strip that away entirely.
And then there's this other layer, this concept of internalized oppression that Mind Matters touches on.
Oh, yeah, that's a tricky one. It's basically when you start to believe the negative messages you're getting from the person you depend on.
Like their doubts become your doubts.
Exactly. You start to internalize those limitations, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So we've talked about how these feelings arise and how they can impact you mentally. But what can you actually do about it? If you're in this situation, where do you even begin?
Well, under their roof, under my skin, offer some good starting points. The first thing is to just acknowledge those feelings. Let yourself feel them.
It's okay to feel both grateful and resentful at the same time.
Exactly. Don't try to suppress either emotion. Just recognize that they can coexist.
And journaling can be a good way to process all of that, right?
Yeah, getting those feelings out of your head and onto paper can be really helpful.
And maybe even help you spot some patterns you weren't aware of before.
Right. Once you've acknowledged those feelings, the next step is to get specific about what's making you feel controlled.
So instead of just feeling generally uneasy, try to pinpoint the actual things that trigger those feelings.
Like, is it a lack of privacy? Or feeling like you have to constantly justify your actions?
Or maybe feeling like your opinions don't matter.
Right. Once you know what those triggers are, you can start to address them.
And that brings us to boundaries, which can be a tricky subject, especially in a dependent relationship.
It is tricky, but under their roof, under my skin, really emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries, even small ones.
So it's not about trying to change the whole dynamic overnight.
No, it's about starting small. Maybe carving out some time for yourself each day.
Or having a say in certain decisions that directly affect you.
Exactly. Find those areas where you might have a little leverage and start there.
And what about talking to the person you're dependent on? Is that ever a good idea?
Under their roof, under my skin, suggests that communication can be helpful, but only if it's safe.
Safety first, always.
Right. If you think it's possible to have an open and honest conversation, it could be worth trying.
But how do you even approach that kind of conversation?
The key is to frame it around your own well-being, not about blaming them.
So instead of saying, you make me feel, try something like, I feel.
Exactly. Focus on how their actions make you feel. For example, I feel anxious when I don't have any time to myself.
But if communication isn't safe or it just doesn't work, what else can you do?
Well, this is where planning for greater independence comes in. Both under their roof, under my skin, and life in their hands. Talk about this.
So even if full independence feels like a distant goal, you can start taking small steps towards it.
Right. Start saving some money, even if it's just a little bit.
Or maybe learn some new skills that could help you get a better job down the line.
Look into different housing options, anything that gives you a sense of progress.
And it's important to build a support network outside of that dependent relationship.
Absolutely. Having friends, family, or even just acquaintances you can turn to can make a huge difference.
And of course, throughout all of this, you have to take care of your mental health.
Oh, that's essential.
Yeah.
Both sources really stress the importance of self-care.
And setting realistic expectations, Change doesn't happen overnight.
Right. And if you're struggling, don't hesitate to reach out for professional help.
A therapist can give you tools to cope with those difficult emotions.
And help you figure out how to move towards greater autonomy.
It's like having a guide to help you navigate this whole messy situation.
Exactly. And Life in Their Hands also talks about how other people can support someone going through this.
So it's not just on the person who's feeling dependent to figure everything out?
Right. Friends and family can offer a listening ear, practical help, and encouragement.
But it's important to do it in a way that empowers the person,
Absolutely. Avoid enabling the controlling dynamics. Focus on helping them regain their own sense of agency.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive into a complex and often unspoken experience. To wrap things up, what are the key takeaways you hope our listener will leave with?
I think the most important thing is to remember that if you're feeling controlled because you depend on someone, your feelings are completely valid.
You're not alone in this.
Not at all. It's a common struggle, and there are things you can do to start feeling better. Acknowledge those feelings, set boundaries where you can, communicate if it's safe, plan for your future, and prioritize your mental health.
Those are all really powerful steps towards reclaiming your sense of self.
And remember, Even small steps can make a big difference.
And for you, our listener, as you go about your day, think about this. What's one small step you could take today to feel a little bit more in control of your own life? It might not be much, but it's a start. And every journey begins with a single step. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.